Hello! Hello, everybody. This is multiple streaming platforms, so here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We got the producer here, though, so hopefully we're going to be all good today. I am Chase Boutice. This is
Alex Coleman.
We are two beatnik astrologers. That's what we call ourselves. We are here to talk about the current eclipse, the current transits, the weirdness of it all, what you guys are going through, what we're going through, and to help guide, assist, laugh, work through it, right? So today we had a solar eclipse, a full moon solar eclipse on June 10th, 2021. It was in the sign of Gemini. What a full moon solar eclipse means, let's see if we make sure this is all working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's working.
Yep,
cool.
It's all going.
Yay! What a full moon solar eclipse means is that the sun and the moon are conjunct one another, right? And so
So the moon is right in front of the sun.
right.
Mm-hmm.
It's eclipsing the sun, which is really, really, really dramatic, which is why people in all kinds of old-timey times thought that it was the end of days or that there was some great, massive something that was happening, right?
The apocalypse.
The apocalypse that was going on. And it really did signify massive change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've just kind of seen it as this, we've taken it into some scientific realm, thinking that it's just some scientific thing, but it's really this powerful shift, an energy, an eclipse. It's a darkening of the light, right? For a moment, right? And what I have found in astrology, what I have found in my own life is that it really brings about it accelerates change. It accelerates any kind of transformational, anything that needs to be let go, anything that needs to be come in. They say full moon solar eclipses are culminations of things, like a final release and an ending. And then the new moon are kind of the beginnings. They're the same thing, really, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter. Right. But yeah, so we're here to talk about that today and to kind of talk about what's been going on with us and to take a look at the chart, to dive into the chart and to, see what the heck's been going on. What's been going on with you?
Well, this is also a really special time because of the lunar eclipse that happened. What was that, 2 weeks ago? Was that less than 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Something like that.
All eclipses happen in moon.
Is it always happened that way?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I don't know a ton about eclipses, so this is a learning experience for me as well.
But
you can tell how intense this time feels.
It's so intense. I think it feels really intense because it's we're at the, I've been saying, we're hitting this new frequency. It's the age of Aquarius, right? We're hitting this new frequency. We're hitting this new era. This is the first set of eclipses in the new post-2020 era, right? So the new zodiac calendar started in April with Aries, right? Or the end of March. And now we're in May, June. This is the first set of eclipses that are kind of accelerate. Already the energies are unstable. They're crazy. They're wild. And then now we have these eclipses, which are just woo, right? I don't know about you guys, but I've been feeling tired.
So tired. Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. We've been sleeping a ton, getting a ton of sleep, just feeling really tired, drinking some coffee, feeling even more tired. And it's easy to think man, what is going on with me? What is wrong with me? But then you talk to your friends and everyone seems tired, right? It seems like the same things are going on with everyone. And the more you start to realize that, the more you start to go easier on yourself.
Yeah.
And just kind of pay attention to okay, it's not just me. There's this flow that I'm working with. And that frees you just not bog yourself down with so much self-criticism.
Well, I was talking to one of my friends and it kind of just came out that I was because we've been talking about how tired we feel. Mm-hmm. And I've been saying the massive thing that we've both been feeling lately is this ego death energy. And I don't know if you guys are feeling this or not, but this is what I've been feeling massively lately.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean to you, Alex? What does ego death mean?
Death of the narrative. It's a really great way to sum it up for me, I think. the ego, it really is this sort of, a lot of what the ego is this story that we've built up around ourselves and who we are, that can sort of mask our natural essence. It's like this defensive sort of structure that we've built up through these stories and who we're supposed to be and who other people are supposed to be and what should be going on. And what's happening now is it's coming to this high pressure point where that narrative can't support itself any longer, and it's collapsing and causing transformation and change. And where the veil is lifting, you could say this is an apocalyptic time. Apocalypse means lifting of the veil. So that old idea that the eclipse is a sort of an apocalyptic end of time sort of thing seems to be accurate.
Well, it is an end of an era. It's the end of an era. It's the end of the old American way, the old heteronormative, patriarchal, colonial way. And it's the birth of the individual. It's the birth of the age of Aquarius, the birth of non-decentralization, access to energy. Everyone has access to energy. Everyone has access to power. Everyone has access to all of these things, right? And yeah, I think for me, when we say ego death, like, because I've like studied Buddhism, you know, my whole life, right? And I've like studied lots of like Buddhism. I studied the ego. We've all studied the ego, right, in all of our religious classes. I think for me, and now at this point in time, ego really means these boxes that I've kept myself in, like. Somehow these, like Alex said, these narratives or these it's like these routines of wounding stories that I've kept myself in to somehow keep myself smaller. And they're the things that we're attached to. They're the way that we interact with people. They define our relationships. They define the way how much energy we allow out, how much energy we allow in. And the death that has occurred for me in this new era is like releasing because it really, because we really need our egos for some things in the material world, right? We need our egos for some things, like to use our rational brain to like write a check or to do something on the computer. But it doesn't. It does not serve us to use our egos to connect or have intimacy or to authentically express ourselves. When our egos get in the way, that's when we end up dimming the restricting the essence that wants to emerge. Right?
I think ego, I think it's a Greek word.
Is it?
I think so. I might be wrong on that, but I think it literally means self. And like ego is a critical part of being human. Like you have to have an ego to actually exist here on this planet. It's what we interface through this reality with, is our ego, is our self. We need that. But what happens is when we allow the ego to become the mind rather than the soul to become the mind, then there's all these distortions and this pain and this resistance that builds up because the ego has all these natural defenses. So what needs to happen, what happens in these ego death moments, is now the soul emerges and the soul becomes on top, and the soul is being supported by the ego rather than the soul being masked and suffocated by the ego. The ego is sometimes known as the false king, right? Because the true king coming of Christ sort of story almost is like your true dynamic soul self underneath, which is this fluid, infinite thing. And the ego can be this crystallized, stuck sort of thing. So when the ego death happens, all those crystalline structures fall away, and you're free to be this fluid, amorphous being that's soft and vulnerable, and energy affects it and everything. But it's the true essence of yourself.
And the way that's been looking for me recently has been releasing. Well, for me specifically, it's really looked like me allowing in more pleasure. And I know I talk about this a lot, but I think I've come across it in stages, but like because for me, my ego was connected to my defenses and how well I could uphold my sense of self. In the old paradigm, if you were a strong, independent woman, you kind of had to be feisty. And if you had your own business and everything, you had to compete in the capitalistic, like, you know, grind culture where you're like hustling like a motherfucker. You know what I mean? And like, I was exhausted, and that's what I built my ego around. But when you're in that space, it's really, really, really hard to receive. And so what I'm realizing is that my true worth, the amount of that I was actually able to receive, the amount of pleasure I'm actually able to ingest in my life has been actually pretty small compared to what I feel like I need to do in order to be worthy of that. So I have been like, this melting has been happening of like, this sense of self that has been connected to pain, like needing to be in pain, needing to grind, needing to, you know, work out, doing all these things that exhaust me in order to be worthy to receive something very small. It's like in the old paradigm, it was like this, like I had to work my ass off for like a tiny piece of like a small sliver of a brownie. You know what I mean? And it's like now I'm like, but then I would feel guilty about the brownie and then go freaking. This is just like, you know, this is like
never ends, and you don't even enjoy the crumbs that you're getting.
Yeah, exactly, the crumbs. Now I'm like, and it's a freaking process to allow in things, to truly allow things in, because I have to release this defensiveness that I have created. And that is a process, and it can be really difficult. And I think this exhaustion that I've been talking about, that he's been feeling as well, and I don't know if you guys are feeling it too, has been this real essence of fighting, fighting that, like, not fully allow, like when that thing wants to die. It's like birth, I imagine. Like you get really tired, and some people have give birth in like 3 hours. I have lots of friends that just slips out. You know, there's not a lot of resistance.
There's no resistance.
You know, but when you're holding on, it's a death. That's what death and birth are. When you're holding on, it's more painful and it makes you more tired, right? And so through this whole process, it's just that letting go. So I don't know. That's how I've been experiencing. I don't know. How's it been for you?
Well, that's interesting you talk about that, because there's lots of language around birth and death that is the same, and even sex, which is connected with birth, any sort of creation or procreation. There's a lot of language that relates to death, like especially the French word for orgasm means the little death, right? So death and birth are one and the same. They're both like this end point. It's like the snake eating its own tail. Life it's a circle. It's not a linear line. There's not this end and this end. Those ends actually come together in this circle point. And that's why birth and death are the same thing. It's actually a transformation. Ego death means transformation, essentially. A new self emerges, like a snake shedding its skin. You know, snake eating its own tail. Snakes always shed their skin, and that old skin has become literally too small for that snake, right? Too small and too rigid. And that's what happens in these ego death moments, is we become too small and too rigid. We've made ourselves too small, and our true selves, it's really uncomfortable. It feels really constricting. It feels really like literally tight.
Yeah.
And at some point that has to break open. That skin has to break open, because it just cannot be contained as you grow and you evolve as a soul.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. How's it been showing up for you?
How's it been showing up? That was the original question. I always ignore it and go into the philosophy. Don't talk about me. One of the big ones lately, I've had a lot of shame around and fear around money. So whereas you feel like you need to grind for pleasure to allow yourself any sort of food, you have this grinding and health with your body. I have that with money, and this fear of money being a control mechanism rather than what it truly is a manifestation of energy and exchange. And it should be this free flowing fluid thing. It's not meant to be a mechanism to control you, which is what we've been taught it is, especially in America. America has a lot of our economic policy, a lot of our political policy is enforced through economic means. And so we have this narrative of money being a control mechanism rather than something we use to expand and become more and support our own life and support our own pleasure and support what serves us and what serves others.
Well, it's a control / fear. It's based in scarcity. The whole scarcity. It's not a model of abundance and that is available for anyone.
But it can be.
And that's what it is. That's what it actually is.
That's what it actually is. That's the other side of the coin. And so that's what's happening for me is those weights are falling off of me and I'm coming more into a space where the movement of money, like I'm literally able to receive money. I'm able to reach out my hand and ask for it and receive it without all this fear and shame. Whereas, in the past, if I asked for it, I would be scared to even ask for it because I didn't want to feel obligated. Well,
I think it's I especially think for men, there's a real charge around money because it's been on the shoulders traditionally of men. Right? And there's all this response, like it's a noose, right? It's a noose.
Right.
And it's like if you get yourself into a situation where you have to be responsible, that's it. That's the silent prison that men in our culture are in. Women have their own bag, but men have something else, right? And so I think it's that weight of feeling like you don't have a way out and that you must be this provider or person. That it's all these narratives, it's all these bullshit narratives that are just so dead now. They're all so dead and they're all so over, and
when you let go of these things, you allow the unexpected to happen.
Exactly. True magic can ensue, which is what we've been experiencing. We've been experiencing true magic as we truly allow our death of our internal narratives that have really been keeping me. It's like this. I was talking about it yesterday. I was making a video for my online courses, and I was talking about the energy of receptivity and how the energy of receptivity, it's like my whole life, no matter how much I let myself receive, I can still feel that there's like something inside of me that is restricted. Like I'm not fully opening.
Right.
And at this point in time, I'm just fully opening now, which means there has to be this real, true element of relaxation.
Right.
That's been, I think, the biggest key.
Relaxation. We have our first little question here from Kathleen. She's asking how do you overcome the money blockage, meditation, etc. That's a great question. How do we actually do these things? It's release. It's always release. Meditation can be a way to
How
release.
Do you release?
How do you release? Yeah, so I'm getting there, dude. I'm getting there. Let me craft my story. Let me craft my narrative.
Release. You just do it.
You just do it.
It's easy.
I mean, it kind of is just that simple. It
is though. It is. It is and it isn't. That's the fucking thing. When we make it into these things that it's really hard, it becomes really fucking hard.
What's difficult about it is getting your subconscious to actually believe that release, because it can be really easy to just bypass and be like, oh no, I released, I'm done with that, and under the surface you're still just like screaming,
right?
So the deep release meditation can help, because when you meditate properly, the goal is to get underneath your rational mind. And actually into the subconscious, the almost childlike self underneath that. And then it can be these really like childlike affirmations of like, I have all the money in the world, or I am richly abundant.
Well, the way that I've been really doing it with meditation, because I think meditation, I don't know, I've meditated for years, and especially around money stuff, and that never really did the trick for me. There's a guy that I have been studying that has opened up my world, and his name is Eric Butterworth, and he has a book called Spiritual Economics, and he talks about affirmative prayer. And this is something that I have been waking myself up to with affirmative prayers, where You don't affirm something to make it true. You affirm it because it is true. Mm-hmm. And so with the energy of meditation, it's basically getting yourself into a space where you are silent, quiet, blended with the ether enough where you can kind of quiet your mind, get into a silent space, and then from there, find something that feels truly true to you to affirm. To affirm. And from that space, there's a vibration that you can actually feel in your body that's like, you can feel the truth of the affirmation. It's an affirming. It's not, that's what when they say affirmations, I think the new age movement is like so much about like, I'm something, what do people say about affirmations? Whatever. I'm a supermodel. I'm a supermodel, right? Like that's just, I can look in the mirror and be like, I'm a supermodel. Sure, you can. But really, when you're in a space where you're actually grounded and from there you affirm something, like I am richly endowed, or I am, wholly, I am true. I am blessed. I am blessed has been an incredibly powerful thing for me. I am blessed when I really, truly go into that and I can feel the energy of being blessed. That has shifted. That has created a true receptive space. Right. Being open to your intuition, listening inside, being guided, doing the self-work. Yes, Kathleen, yes.
And one of the big ones for me that's maybe the biggest one, the one that only ever really gives me true release is when I actually acknowledge my fears. Like, what is it I'm actually afraid of? Yeah. And I'm completely honest with myself about what I'm afraid of. And then I go into that thing and you go right towards the fear and you imagine it and you imagine that reality. And within that, you find like, it's actually not so bad because we're infinite beings. And no matter what happens, we just keep going on, right? All that ever happens is change. And so if it's trusting that the best things always happen for our growth. And so you acknowledge that timeline of like, well, if that's really what needs to happen, if I need to be, I guess, what's your afraid of being homeless? What would that actually be like? How bad would that be? Going into the darkest timelines and recognizing I will still be okay. I will be whole as a human being and really truly feeling like even if that did happen, you would be okay because you trust in your infinite nature releases a lot of the pressure.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the base of all spiritual work, I think, which is because at the bottom of it all, we feel fear. We feel fear essentially that we're going to die or that some kind of dark, that's it. The very base of it, the very bottom of it all is fear of death, right? And so the point is to release resistance so that you can truly open up to the now, right? Truly open up to the now, which the now is it actually is an abundant space if we can open up to the abundance that we have. But when you allow yourself to go into whatever darkness that is plaguing you and you enter into it, you can offer it, sit at your altar, cry about it. For me, sometimes I just need to have big old cries that really go into it, and I like talk about the fear with God, spirit, the universe, whatever. I'd let myself feel it. I process it. And then afterwards I'm like, oh, I feel amazing. I feel great. Those are some of the ways that those have been my processes, but.
Yeah, it really is all fear of death. And this ties into what we were talking about earlier with ego death and the snaking its own tail. If you can really start to open up to the truth that any death is just a transformation and not an end point, the fear of it dissolves and you can actually allow these deaths to happen.
Yes.
And like, we have all these amazing stories of heroism and hard times for us to look at, right? Where people have gone through much, much, much harder times than most of us have experienced and emerge on the other side of that as these incredible beings. Like what's that Will Smith story where he was like literally homeless and then became a super rich like stockbroker. So that kind of story, you can read those and those can be really affirming, being like, no matter how bad it gets, it will be okay. And lots of the times the thing that's actually manifesting the bad things in the physical reality is this fear that you have.
Yeah, but sometimes that doesn't help. Like that doesn't help me because I become afraid of my fear. Like it's a loop, you know? If like I know that like my fear is the thing that's creating the thing. And then I'm like, fuck, how do I get out of this loop? Because then I get afraid of my fear. And it's all becomes just like a mind fuck. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh my, well, what's that Theodore Roosevelt quote? The only thing to fear is
fear
itself.
No, but that doesn't help me either.
I know, that's just what you're talking
the
about.
The way that only really that's helped me is well, there's lots of
I don't know if you can you really be afraid of your fear, because if you're fear, you're already in fear.
Yeah.
You know, there's it's just, you just have to find some way to release. I mean, if fear is literally what you're afraid of, well, look at that moment. You're in fear at that moment. And how bad is that fear? It's probably as bad as fear can get if you're in fear and you're afraid of fear.
Yeah.
You're literally, if you're afraid of fear, you're already facing your fears.
Yeah.
It's already right
exactly.
there.
Exactly.
You know, so you just ground into the moment and be like, how bad is this fear?
Well, and this is essentially what shadow work is. So shadow work's been a big part of my work in my entire life. And shadow work is basically diving into it's having a moment where you sit like with yourself. And if you're instinctively reacting about something, like you're on alert, you're on like autopilot, you stop and you just ask yourself, what is this really about? And you allow yourself to actually dive into the truth of whatever it is you're feeling. Because on the surface, you might be angry because somebody is wearing, took your, spot at the thing. But what are you really, really upset about? I'm actually really upset that my, brother-in-law, hasn't called me in 3 months and blah, 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 blah. And it's reminding me of when my dad didn't, give me love as a child. That's really what's upsetting, like really, really letting yourself get to the core of things so that you can actually process them, get into the shadow, bringing light to the dark, releasing the fear, so that that is what the ego death process is essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And we did a regression that was really, really supportive to you in this process, where I did a guided meditation for her and literally took her back to this moment as like a 7-year-old child, where there was this core wounding. We like asked the question, like, where did this start? And you go back to that moment where it actually started. And the thing that actually changed it was literally just asking, like, just shine light in this place. It felt like a dark place. It felt like our inner child was in this dark room, and we just visualized shining light into this darkness as much as possible. And more than any of the stuff where it's like, it's okay, tell yourself it's okay.
Yeah, no affirmations.
None of that stuff was really working.
No.
The only thing that worked was just shine light on the darkness. Make this visualize this becoming a bright place where no darkness can hide. And when there's no darkness, there's no unknown. There's nothing for your ego to be afraid of, because it can see all. There's the ego, really what happens is when there's an unknown, when there's a dark place, your incredibly creative, imaginative mind can come up with infinite things that could be in that dark place. And it can come up with some really infinitely bad stuff that's filling that darkness with.
Yes.
And so what you got to do is you got to shine that light into that place, and it'd be like, okay, what is actually there?
What's really crazy is that, so we did this regression around, because I've had nightmares my whole life, right? Well, I've had nightmares since this event happened to me when I was 7 years old. And I had crazy nightmares. I call them night terrors, right? And up until the eclipse, especially lately, they've been nuts.
Yeah.
And poor Alex is like I've been like, it's your fault. Like in the middle of the night, waking up.
I'm like dead asleep, and she wakes up and is like, you're the devil. I'm like, what? I am just sleeping here. What?
And finally, in all of this, basically, I allowed myself to kind of realize. But we shined light on this point in time, and since then, I don't really have nightmares anymore. I haven't had any night terrors. If I do, I wake up within a second and I say, oh, it's not real. And because the night, the dreaming, the dream time is the darkness, right? It's like the part of my subconscious where I'm like, my fears lie, like the darkest part of me where I don't, but for me, it's so active. And since I've kind of really gone into that and shined light on it, I don't have the same reaction to it anymore. And what's even weirder is that like last night or the night before, I had a dream about a snake crawling out of a cage. And the snake was like free to roam. And, I've been reading all these books on Kundalini and the serpent. And, snake is the evolution of our consciousness. And I feel like something in my own consciousness has now been liberated. I'm not in this cage anymore. That's really what I've been feeling during this eclipse is this liberation. It's like this death of this cage. I'm like, these constructs, these egos that have kind of held me in. I have escaped them. I'm escaping them. These fears, this fear, right? I'm allowing that to dissolve. And in that, my imagination, my receptivity, my life experience is like growing immeasurably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was most fascinating about that regression is when we found the dark place and we shined light on it, what was in there?
Me, my little girl.
Yeah.
Little girl.
Yeah, we shined light, and there's this little girl in there. It was you. It was you were afraid of all along. And that's fascinating. I think that's the way it always is. It's always ourselves. As cheesy as it sounds, that's literally what happens. So take that as you will.
There's no more of a mind fuck than having like a really conscious partner because I've been like, it's your fault. You. I literally had a day where I was like, you. And then I was like, oh God, no. Like, you can't do that. Like, no, it's not. It's not anybody else. It's not. It's me.
You can, but it's extremely ineffective.
It just doesn't do anybody any good.
It doesn't do anyone any good.
No growth happens.
It just mounts the tension.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the aspects for the eclipse?
Yeah, let's actually get into the astrology.
Yeah, let's get into
see if we can pick out a narrative about what's happening here, the way the energies are playing off each other. The astrology chart is this chart of these archetypal energies. It's meant to. It's an attempt at mapping out the energies, the feelings of a human being. And it's this map of archetypes that gives us a narrative, and it's fascinating what you can pick out here. You can see the dynamic interplays within yourself.
Yeah.
And it connects you to everything at large too. It connects you to that thing where it's like, why am I feeling tired? And then other people are feeling tired, and then you look at the astrology and you're like, oh wow, there's an energy to this moment in time, and it's mapped out by the planets.
It's imprinted.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that when I looked at this chart, because we have a podcast too now called PSI Wave, if you guys are interested. But we talked about the eclipse a little bit. Oh, we haven't posted that episode
yet. Yeah, we need to post that episode.
We're gonna post that. We'll post that tonight. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the first thing that I noticed this time, which I didn't notice last time, was Uranus right on the ascendant right there.
Well, that changes throughout the day.
No, this is the eclipse.
Oh, the exact moment of the eclipse.
Yeah, right. Boy, okay. I got it.
Yeah.
But so how come we didn't notice that last time? It's weird.
I don't know.
It's squaring Saturn. It's trining Venus. Okay, we'll back up. So an eclipse, like we said, is when the sun is exact degrees as the moon, right? Mm-hmm. So the moon eclipses the sun, right? Mm-hmm. So this eclipse was at Gemini. It's 19 degrees Gemini, and it was conjunct right next to Venus, which was 20 degrees Venus.
Mercury, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's Mercury. Sorry,
Mercury
you're
retrograde.
Right.
It's Mercury retrograde is conjunct.
Oh,
this has been a Mercury retrograde time as well.
Very interesting. And Gemini is the sign. The sign ruled by Gemini is is Mercury. And so what the feeling I get about that is that there is this new channeled power energy that is coming in, because this is all we talk about. This is what our podcast is about and everything. It's about the new wave. Hello, Marsha. It's about the new wave of energy that's come in as we've started this new zodiac cycle, 2021 cycle, post 2020. I always keep talking about post 2020, the post 2020 era, right? So the new zodiac cycle, what's been downloaded to me is there's new frequencies, there's new currents, there's new energies that are available to us. We've up-leveled now, right? So with that, right, Gemini is an air sign. So the age of Aquarius is ruled by, it's an air sign, right? It's actually currents. Its glyph is currents, right? The other two air signs are Gemini and Libra, right? So this eclipse, Gemini is at its highest is a channel, right? It's at its highest is a channel. So what I was seeing with that is that there's these new currents, these new channeled messages, energies that are coming through. But there's like not a block, but like there's something that has to be released in order for the new to fully be able to express itself. Mm-hmm. So if you find yourself right now going back and looking at communicating or looking at things that need to be revised fully in order to be able to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, with a Mercury retrograde, that would make sense. It's an inversion of the linearity. Rather than the mind looking forward, the mind is now looking backward and looking inward. Mercury being representative of the mind, the intellect, and the communication. Mercury is the heavenly messenger. It is the messenger between the heavens and earth.
What do you think that this eclipse specifically in Gemini is about at this point in time?
Balancing paradox.
Yeah.
Because Gemini is the two twins that are diametrically opposed, that cannot fully understand each other or see things from the other's view, but they have to look at each other and listen to each other and integrate, right? They're always looking at the other. So like the one twin cannot see itself, but it sees the other twin clearly and is communicating about that. The other twin can't see itself, but it can see the other twin clearly and can tell it what it sees, right?
It's the reconciliation of duality.
It's the reconciliation of duality. Mm-hmm.
It's the introduction of paradox.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Sadhguru was talking about. We were watching Sadhguru talk about with Matthew McConaughey talk the other day, and he was like, what was he saying about the hand? He was like, you can only see this one.
Oh, yeah, you can't see the other side of your hand.
Ever.
Right, you can only see one
if
side.
There's a shadow, there's always an opposite that you can never see, right? In a dualistic culture, right? Mm-hmm. But now that we're starting to attune to a new frequency that is based in energy over matter, we can start to actually embrace paradox and see both sides at the same time. Right. That's what's starting to happen to me.
Or at the very least, have faith and know that there's another side of the coin. Like eventually, like there's another side of the coin, because it's a 3-dimensional object. It's not a 2-dimensional object. There's literally another dimension that we are becoming aware of.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that this is really one of the most important things in this new era, in this new time, is really about, and I'm curious to know how all of you are reconciling with this, or if you find that this is true for you, that there's this reconciliation of opposites, meaning an introduction into truly beginning to embody paradox. I don't know if this is true for you, but this is what has been happening for me, meaning when it's like, no matter what thing I look at or anything, if I start getting really on my high horse about it, I'm like, oh, but the opposite's true too.
Mm-hmm. Always.
I'm always like, the opposite's true too. I used to be, I swear to God, this is what's happened to me through 2020. I swear. I think it was that deep, intense polarization of our freaking culture and our country and our world. But after that, I was like, there was like such an intense charge, war energy. It literally became like, I could see both sides. I could see the truth of both sides. Not that I am either side politically or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, there's many truths. There's more sides to one thing, right? There's multiple truths to one thing. Life is paradoxical. There's always an opposing side, and there's always information. That's what Gemini is about. It's about information. There's information on this side and there's information on this side. So when we're just looking at one side, we're saying that's the information. That's the right information. That's the only information. When actually there's an entire other side, right, that has a whole bunch of information too. We can either choose to look at that and acknowledge it and acknowledge that as being true as well, or we can miss out on a whole nother dimension of life. This has been the true awakening moment for me, I think, in my life. What has happened most recently is that as I flip and I look at the other side, I'm like, oh yeah, they're both true. They're both right. Therefore, I can see the paradox. I can see every single side. I can see beyond black and white. I can see beyond dark and light. I can see it all. And I can start to ground myself in the energy behind it. Oh, Sheila, hi. Hey. Thank you for your positive energy and brilliance. Sending you love from Portland. So nice to see you, Sheila. Yeah, I feel like that's been my biggest, most powerful thing that's happened to me through 2020. And I think that's the dissolution of the ego that we're talking about. The ego death that we're talking about here is like this dying of this idea that is connected to this polarity, to this duality, right? To this matter, which our egos were connected to this paradigm that was connected to this one kind of dualistic energy. And now that we're beginning to embrace paradox, we're actually looking at both sides of our hand and seeing that they both are actually exist and acknowledging that they exist.
And they're the same part of the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That we're having to shift our entire narrative, our entire lives, our entire truth, and reformat who we actually are in this world.
Yeah.
It's heavy. That just came out. I don't know where that came from. I got excited.
That's how you do. You get excited.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It flows out of you.
It just flows out. That's the 11/11 shit.
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking more about the Uranus on the ascendant thing, and that could be part of a sign of the ego death thing. I often think of the ascendant as the mask, right? And
right.
The ego is the mask. It is through what we interface with this world with. So Uranus is the rebel. It's the revolutionary. It revolutionizes and transforms things, sometimes through dramatic, sometimes violent change. And with that on the ascendant for this eclipse, that could be a culmination of this ego death that we were talking about. So it's just,
well, you have to have kind of revolution. Mm-hmm. That's what I've been feeling.
Yeah, you do.
I've been feeling, yeah.
To change, you do have to be sort of a revolutionary. You have to appear that way. Whenever you change, whatever other people or other systems or other things they have their own attachments with you being that certain way. Right. And so then to all those things, you become a revolutionary.
Yes. Yes. That's right. Uranus is also linked. It's also the planet of high intuitive development.
It's the higher octave of Mercury, which
Mercury
is the mind.
Mercury's the mind, and Uranus is the intuition, which means that you're starting to operate your life through intuitive awareness versus rational awareness, which means that you are becoming aware of the cosmic, or you're becoming aware of the channeled energy of insights, instincts, your instincts. You're starting to get instincts about things, and you're starting to acknowledge them, follow them, trust them. They're beginning to take over. You can't ignore them. Uranus is also the great authenticator. It's an authenticator, meaning you cannot be false. There is no falsity involved with Uranus, which means that a lot of times you become kind of weird. That's definitely been happening for me lately. My family thinks I'm becoming super weird.
Yeah.
I'm just starting to call myself a beatnik, which is like, there's a revolution happening right now, you guys. I feel it. I don't know if you do, but it's like there is a shift in consciousness, and it's creating, we have to disintegrate from our structures, and that is a revolution. And there is a liminal space that we have to live in, a chaotic space, in order to reformulate whatever it is, our identity or no identity, right?
Right. Or no one identity,
Right.
There's always some sort of identity. Each moment contains all, but it's just allowing it to be fluid and have no attachment. That's the closest we can get to a selflessness, a no identityness, is essentially being a fluid self rather than a crystallized self.
The other thing that I'm noticing about this this eclipse is that the eclipse is actually trining Saturn. That's very auspicious, because Saturn has been in Aquarius, and it will continue to be for the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever sign Saturn is in, it, you know about this, you can talk about Saturn, but it's it brings structure, it brings boundaries, it materializes, it brings order, it rules karma. It's like whatever you need to face within the self, or that the collective needs to face. So Saturn in Aquarius is forcing us to confront our innovative, revolutionary, eccentric, what else? What else are some
Aquarian traits?
Yeah.
Revolutionary. Aquarius is humanitarian as well.
The collective.
Aquarius sees the big picture, the biggest picture, right? And I think that's a lot of the reason why it can appear revolutionary. It appears revolutionary to anyone who's in a smaller, more focused, more ego-minded consciousness, because then the larger mind doesn't make sense to the smaller mind. Right, so that's why Aquarius is the revolutionaries. It's got this larger, broader, big picture understanding that it's operating within and operating from, and it can do things that the smaller mind just it doesn't understand, doesn't make sense. Right. Yes, Aquarius is the collective consciousness, Marsha. She says, I'm definitely experiencing the rebel tendencies. Everyone thinks I'm a little woo-hoo lately. Oh, yeah.
Thank God somebody else. Thank God this is going on for somebody else.
Embrace the woo-hoo.
Because it's definitely been going on for me, and I'm like...
We can look insane.
We look crazy.
We look crazy.
I don't care. I don't care. I just keep being like, freedom!
Freedom!
Whatever, man. That's what freaking Aquarius is all about. It's all about freedom, man. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? For me, freedom means freedom from fear. Mm-hmm. That's what freedom means to me. Freedom from fear. And which means people are trying to put their fear onto me. I am so sensitive. So are you. But mostly all of you probably watching this. Right. Super duper sensitive. That when somebody tries to put their fear onto me, I used to pre-2020 take it on and dim my light, carry it all day, make me into feel a little fear ball, right? Anxious, exhausted, depleted, right? Carry that fear. I'm not doing that no more. Yeah. I'm like letting that shit go. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna hold this fear for you anymore. Psh. It's like Neo in the Matrix. No.
Yeah.
No, motherfucker. No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I am the light. We all need to become the light for this planet. We need more light. Right. Which is freedom and love, which is essentially love.
Right. Because our traumatic experiences have made us deeply aware of what other people think about us, right? As like a survival mechanism. I know that's how it's happened for me and for a lot of people, and a lot of other people who can identify as empaths. Is something traumatic happened in early childhood, or multiple things, or conglomerates of experiences that made it critical that you understood what other people felt about you, so you could try to massage that situation before it resulted in some violent climax. And what's happening now is we're becoming so much more grounded in ourselves and feeling so much more secure in ourselves, and we recognize it no longer serves us to take on those narratives and those fears of other people. So now we have to hold this simultaneous awareness of what other people think about us, and then not let that rule our lives.
And there can be a lot of backlash when you stop taking on people's darkness.
Right.
They get real mad. Because they'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? You used to be in cahoots with me. You used to agree with me. Because that's, a lot of, if you had a lot of friendships or relationships where you, collaborated, or what's the word? When you commiserate around darkness, right? There was like, how many of us had just friendships where we used to just talk shit about like, whatever, right? And now I'm not participating in that as much anymore. And so people get mad. They're like, oh, they're becoming, my sister told me that she told my mom I'm becoming a nihilist. And I'm like, I'm not becoming a nihilist. I don't want to talk about dark shit all the time. I'm sorry. I want to talk about things that are uplifting. Is that okay with you, with everybody? Is that all right?
It's not just mad, it's mad.
Mad. Man.
No, I mean, people have a lot of ego built up around that darkness, right? And so when you abandon that, it can look like nihilism to them, because it's like, you don't care about anything anymore. It's like, no, I don't care about what you care about, or what I used to care about. I don't care about that anymore, because you recognize that that's actually what's feeding that monster. Whatever you focus on is what you're creating and what was persisting. And that can be really hard for people to let go, especially for people who come from maybe a more sort of activist mindset or whatever, where you think you're causing change by focusing on all the trauma and all the darkness and going and attacking it. But that's like this sort of shadow fight sort of mentality, like you were talking about earlier, where you're like, it's you're fucking me up, and it's not, it doesn't work. It never is outside of you. It's always inside of you. And so to let that go, you have to let go of that fight and actually start focusing on the positive things and the direction things could go, and focusing on the solutions rather than the problems. And it's so much more uplifting and serves things so much better,
Hell yes. It doesn't mean that you're just positive all the time, okay?
No.
I want to make that distinction, because I'm not somebody that's into being positive all the time. But I am somebody that's all about having spiritual discipline, so that because we all need to process shit, right? Like, we still are human. We still have things to process. We still have darkness to face that we need to, but it's a very fine line for how long you remain in that darkness and how long you need to process that shit for. Because this is what I've learned, because I've lived in Seattle for 4 years, and that's a dark place. And I got really into my shadow there. And sometimes I didn't know how to get out of it. I just was in it all the time. And then I just was like, I don't want to live like this all the time. I want to have more joy. And so that's simply what I'm talking about now, is having a spiritual discipline to begin to pay attention to my moods and to process it as I need to, but then move out of it as quickly as I can, so that I can live a life that is in more pleasure, pleasure.
It's about seeking positivity. It's not about spiritually bypassing and always like, I'm always positive and always love and light, because then you're actually missing what's going on with you under the surface. It's about being aware of yourself, being aware of the energy that you're in, and then constantly working to shift it. If there is a place where you hold darkness and you feel upset, you go in and you work with it to shift it around. You speak with it as if you were speaking with a person, and you show it all the other things that it's missing, because it's just focusing on the darkness. Then you bring in all the light to bring balance to that out. It's not ignoring the darkness, it's bringing balance to the force.
Force.
Bring balance.
Luke. All right. What else we got here? Oh, the other thing we were talking about, which I still think we should talk about more about because it's exciting, is the Mars opposing Pluto.
Right.
So that's another massive aspect. Mars is the assertive, energized, gas pedal, go energy. It's like me right now. It's excited and it's the masculine, right? It's the pushing forward energy, right? Pluto is, what's Pluto, Alex?
Pluto is transformation and rebirth. It's known as the higher octave of Mars, actually, whereas Mars is this raw aggression or power in the moment. Pluto is the deep internal power.
Yes.
The deep internal power.
Pluto is the archetype, the most profound, powerful archetype in astrology. It is like combustion, explosive. It is the phoenix. It is the rise of the phoenix. It is the ultimate transformation, right? It is the absolute obsession and control, Hitler energy, or it's the absolute freedom, release, Buddha energy. Whichever you want to take, it's both sides of Pluto. Okay.
Maximum intensity, furthest out planet.
Yeah. So to have those two opposing at the eclipse is pretty intense because they're both pretty intense.
They're both the warriors.
We talked about this last time. We talked about how Pluto is in Capricorn, right? Capricorn has been going through massive change in the 2020s. Through 2020, we went through a map, Pluto, Capricorn, Pluto, Saturn conjunction that was all of 2020. That was really the death of our deepest bureaucratic structures, old school white supremacist structures, right?
Capricorn being the father, essentially. Capricorn being this sort of fatherly energy, taking care of things, making structure. And so Pluto is the death and rebirth of that. It can also be conservative, the death and rebirth of conservatism. And it's opposing Cancer, which is the mother energy. Cancer is the mother of the chart. So the mother and the father are both sort of opposing each other.
In this mass dynamic power struggle, really.
There's been a power struggle of the masculine and feminine energies.
Well, the masculine has so taken over the feminine on this planet for like the past 7,000 years, really. So what's happening right now is there's a death of that. There's a death of that imbalance, and that the Mars in Cancer is starting to assert. The feminine is the Cancer is the feminine archetype. It's the archetype of the mother. It's also the ultimate energy of intuition, empathy, deep water. It's the cardinal water sign, right? So there's an assertion of that energy at this point in time. It's starting to assert itself. That power, that water, that yin, that all of us have, right? That it's not just masculine and feminine. It's all of us have it balanced within ourselves. That's starting to rise. That's starting to gain ground. It's starting to assert itself. While the Plutonic energy in Capricorn is it's just slowly disintegrating, dying.
Right. Anytime there's an opposition, it is that sort of Gemini thing of these two things looking at each other and not understanding each other, but I can see you and you can see me, right? And the thing that really, the way you deal with that energy and you release that tension and actually allow that to flow and to work as it should is when each side stops resisting seeing each other and allows the light to fully be shown and to fully actually see the other side for who it is and what it is.
Wait. Say that again?
So there's an opposition. Both sides are needing to see each other, right?
Right.
They need to understand each other. And they both come from these opposing, opposite dynamic forces. And the thing that releases that is when you actually allow yourself to truly see the other side, to truly see that other side of the coin, and then have compassion for.
How do you do that?
How you have compassion. You drop resistance.
You forgive.
Right? You forgive. Exactly.
That's what we've been talking a lot about lately. That's been part of the ego death that I've been talking about. Is this learning forgiveness, true forgiveness, which we were talking about this the other day, and we were looking up the definition of forgive, right? And to me, what I've been seeing it as is really like forgiveness is simply allowing somebody to be themselves. You forgive them. You forgive.
It's forgiving.
It's forgiving. It's forgiving. You allow them to simply be who they are. And because what happens in these opposing dynamic energies is that there's a constant resistance, there's a constant charge, right? So when you forgive, you allow that person to be who they are, even if they are putting things onto you that are not yours. As long as you don't offer back that charge, that judgment, that energy back to them, that energy is going to go back to them and it's going to shift. It's going to dissipate the entire charge of the relationship and it's going to shift the entire dynamic, right?
It allows a new state of being when you're forgiving someone, that they're in like a state that you don't like or you don't want them to be, if you actually want them to change, you have to you forgive them, and that is the actual action that will change them.
Yes.
The resistance is what will cement them in that thing that you don't want them to be. And I think a big thing that we're being asked to forgive is, these patriarchal structures that have caused us so much suffering and held us down. What we can do is to ease this transition is to actually forgive them, see why they exist. They come from fear. If we're talking about Capricorn being the father here, there's this wounded father that's afraid for everyone. It's afraid for the tribe and has built all these domineering structures out of fear, trying to keep everyone safe,
under control,
right? And it's really they're trying to keep us safe is the ultimate underlying thing underneath there. And so we now are at a point where like that fear is no longer serving us. We don't need to be afraid, and to help that energy release its fear, we have to forgive it, because it's dying and it's being stressed to its maximum and its things aren't working anymore. And to ease its death and rebirth, we can forgive it and see and have compassion for the fear that created all this.
That feels so good too.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so good to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
It like lightens my heart,
mm-hmm.
especially for someone like me I have a lot of hardy fire energy, Italian fire energy. So I get really
mm-hmm.
mad.
Mm-hmm.
So when I like actually open myself up to forgiveness, I feel really, really, really good. It makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about here?
I don't know. It's interesting you drew the glyph for Juno down here.
Is that what I drew?
That's the glyph for the asteroid.
I was
Juno.
just doodling while we were talking.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes she just does things.
I just do things.
It's amazing.
It's like something is controlling me.
Mm-hmm.
What's Juno?
I think Juno is another sort of relationship.
Yeah, it's a relationship asteroid thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where Juno is currently.
I don't know, but our relationship has transformed drastically through this whole thing. All resistances and fear. And,
a lot of forgiveness
mm-hmm.
and a lot of shifting and
things are so much better between us, and like the way things were supposed to be, and it's the best my life has ever been.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. It's the best my life has ever been.
Yeah.
Because I'm open to receive and I've allowed forgiveness. And really, when you were talking about forgiveness, it really comes down to forgiveness of the self.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we have these structures, these egoic structures, and we may lash out in protection of the self, what ends up happening with me, at least, is that I end up feeling bad that I did that in the moment I'm in this like mass defense mode, but then when I go towards back, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I acted like that. When we did the regression, it was like this little girl turned into this monster. That was the other side of the little girl who was stuck in this closet or whatever. And the more and more I allow myself to forgive myself, you forgive others and you forgive yourself for judging them, the more and more I've allowed like myself to be who I really am, which is really a loving, easygoing soul.
Mm-hmm.
And life has become much, 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 much more fun and easy. So yeah. Yay! Is there anything else you want to share, talk about?
I think that's pretty good. We're at over an hour here.
Wow.
Yeah.
We did it.
Like that.
We did it.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
We covered a lot. If there's more you want to hear about the eclipse, we'll be releasing a podcast tonight that may talk about some of the other details we didn't get into here. But I think we hit pretty thoroughly on the major themes and some of the stuff we didn't cover in the podcast.
Yeah, it's called Psi Wave, PSI Wave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for joining, everybody. Everybody who was here with us, thank you for joining. It was lovely to have you here, and thanks for watching. I hope that this was helpful to some, to all, to no one, whoever. Mm-hmm. We're doing this because this is what we feel called to do. It's fun.
Thanks for having me on to your
stream. It's super great having you on.
This is fun.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. So much to think about
Sheila.
it. Oh, Sheila, you're so sweet. Such a light of love, Sheila. 11, Alchemist Coco, what's up?
Hey.
Yeah. I don't know who you are, but you
11,
rule. That's
11.
right.
She's right.
She's got it. She's on it. All right. All right. Wonderful. 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 So lovely to have you all. I love you. Talk soon. See you later. And have a lovely eclipse. Ah! Okay. Bye.